Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving into the dark and twisted world of human experiments. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. I don't know about you guys, but thinking about this stuff keeps me up at night. It's just like, how could people do these things to each other? It's messed up, but also weirdly fascinating. So, I wanted to make this video for a while now, and I finally just need to talk about it. We're going through the top 10 most terrifying human experiments that actually happened. Let's get into it. Let's begin with the Holmesburg prison experiments. From the 1950s to the 1970s, prisoners in Philadelphia were used as subjects for various dermatological experiments. They applied toothpaste and deodorant on them to observe the effects. And it wasn't voluntary. Most of them didn't even know what they were signing up for. They were promised extra cigarettes or other small incentives, and then they were injected with radioactive isotopes and subjected to various other experiments. It's disturbing on many levels. These individuals were already in prison, and then they were essentially tortured in the name of science. Where is the humanity in that? Okay, so we all know about the Nazis, right? Like they were the worst of the worst. And their experiments on concentration camp prisoners during World War II? Don't even get me started. We're talking like everything from freezing people to death to trying to create conjoined twins. They were obsessed with creating the perfect human race, and they didn't care who they hurt in the process. I don't even want to go into too much detail about it because it's just too disturbing. But let's just say that the Nazi experiments are a dark stain on human history. This one is just heartbreaking. From 1956 to 1970, at the Willowbrook State School in New York, mentally disabled children were intentionally infected with hepatitis. I'm not kidding. They said it was to study the disease, but come on, you're infecting innocent children with a serious illness? That's just wrong. Apparently, they thought that because the kids were likely to get hepatitis anyway in the overcrowded institution, they might as well just infect them on purpose. The worst part is that the parents were told it was a treatment program, and some were even coerced into consenting because they wouldn't admit their children to the overcrowded facility otherwise. It's just sickening. Chapter 4. The Aversion Project. Apartheid's Shame. Okay, so this one is particularly messed up. During apartheid in South Africa, gay soldiers were subjected to horrific experiments in an attempt to cure them of their homosexuality. We're talking chemical castration, electric shock therapy, the whole 9 yards. They even tried to rewire their brains to make them attracted to women. It's just how can you even think that's possible? It's just another example of how prejudice and discrimination can lead to horrific acts of cruelty. Chapter 5. The Milgram Experiment. How far would you go? Okay, so this one is a little different. It's not physically harmful, but it's still super messed up. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram conducted this experiment at Yale University to see how far people would go to obey authority. Participants were told they were giving electric shocks to another person, who was actually an actor pretending to be shocked. And the shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. The results were shocking, pun intended. A majority of people were willing to administer what they thought were lethal shocks, just because someone in a lab coat told them to. It's scary to think about how easily we can be influenced by authority figures. Chapter 6. Project MKUltra. The CIA's Mind Games. Okay, so this one is straight out of a spy movie. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the CIA was secretly experimenting with mind control. No joke. They used all sorts of crazy methods, like hypnosis, drugs, and even sensory deprivation, to try to control people's minds. And they weren't afraid to use unwitting American citizens as their test subjects. It's how do you even sleep at night knowing that you're doing that to people? The CIA's mind control experiments are still shrouded in secrecy, but what we do know is seriously disturbing. Chapter 7: The Stanford Prison Experiment. The Power of Roles. Okay, so this one is another classic psychological experiment that went horribly wrong. In 1971, at Stanford University, a group of students were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners in a simulated prison environment. The experiment was supposed to last for 2 weeks, but it had to be shut down after just 6 days because things got way out of hand. The guards became increasingly authoritarian and abusive, while the prisoners became withdrawn and depressed. It's scary how quickly people can adapt to roles, even if those roles are assigned arbitrarily. The Stanford Prison Experiment shows us just how powerful social situations can be in shaping our behavior. Chapter 8: Unit 731. Japan's Dark Secret. This one is seriously messed up, you guys. During World War II, the Japanese Imperial Army conducted horrific experiments on Chinese civilians and prisoners of war at a secret facility called Unit 731. They were doing all sorts of messed up stuff, like vivisections, germ warfare testing, and even weaponizing the bubonic plague. Seriously, it's like something out of a horror movie. It's estimated that tens of thousands of people died at Unit 731, and the worst part is that the Japanese government has never fully acknowledged the atrocities that were committed there. It's a dark chapter in human history that deserves to be remembered. Chapter 9: The Monster Study. Speechless. This one is just plain cruel. In 1939, at the University of Iowa, a group of orphans were subjected to a speech experiment that left them with lifelong psychological scars. The researchers wanted to see if stuttering was a learned behavior, so they divided the children into 2 groups. They gave positive speech therapy to one group and negative speech therapy to the other. The negative speech therapy involved belittling the children and telling them they were stutterers, even if they weren't. The results were devastating. The children who received negative speech therapy developed speech problems and psychological issues that lasted for years. It's a reminder that even seemingly harmless experiments can have unintended consequences. Chapter 10: The Tuskegee Syphilis Study. America's Shame. Okay, so this one is probably one of the most infamous examples of unethical human experimentation in American history. From 1932 to 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service conducted a study on syphilis in African American men in Tuskegee, Alabama. Now, here's the messed up part. The men weren't told they had syphilis. They were told they were being treated for bad blood, but they weren't actually given any treatment at all. In fact, they were even prevented from receiving treatment from other sources. The study went on for 40 years, and during that time, many of the men died from syphilis or from complications related to the disease. It's a horrific example of racism and medical malpractice, and it's a stain on the history of the United States. And there you have it, folks. The top 10 most terrifying human experiments that actually happened. If you found this video informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Stay safe, and remember, history can be as dark as it is enlightening. I don't know about you guys, but I need a palate cleanser after that. I'm gonna go watch some cat videos or something. Stay curious, but be careful what you wish for. You never know what kind of messed up stuff is hiding in the shadows.